should then proceed with the first keynote speak, which is going to be given by Dr. André Amado. I would then welcome him to turn on his camera and maybe start sharing his presentation with us so everybody can see it. Thank you very much, André. Well, as Professor Coleman said, this workshop is a collaborative initiative between Germany and Brazil. It's a part of this official collaboration TUM has established with the Federal University of Juiz de Fora since last year. So we established this official collaboration for teaching activities and also for research activities. And within this official collaboration, we have them start developing the BEF-Atlantic project, which is the focus of this talk right now. So I would like to thank and to welcome Dr. André Amado and thank him a lot for accepting our invitation to give this opening talk in the TropiBEF workshop 2020. He's going to talk about the BEF-Atlantic project. Dr. André Amado obtained his PhD in ecology from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in 2008. He was investigating the photodegradation of organic matter in coastal lagoons. Currently, André Amado is a professor at the biology department of the Federal University of Juiz de Fora. His research focuses on the roles that microorganisms play in the carbon cycle of freshwater and marine systems. More recently, André Amado became the principal investigator of the BEF-Atlantic project, which is a large-scale restoration and tree diverse experiment in the Brazilian Atlantic forest. So welcome again, Dr. André Amado. The stage is yours. Sorry, André, you're muted. Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Okay, now I'm on. Thank you, Leo, for the introduction. Thanks, Dr. Coleman, for the hosting this workshop. I'm very happy to be here speaking, and it's a great challenge for me. As Leonardo said, I come from aquatic ecology mostly, and so I'm not the expert here in BEF and tree diverse experiments, but I'm very excited about this huge project that you're starting now. And it's important to say that it's a collaboration between our university, TUM, and a private company here in Brazil. And together we've been able to put all these ideas together. So the title of this talk is BEF-Atlantic, a large-scale tree diverse experiment and restoration on the Atlantic forest. In these 30 minutes, the idea is making a very brief personal presentation and trajectory, just to let you know how I am trying to get comfortable in a different area. And so I'm not presenting an ongoing project. It's something that we are starting. I mean, we've been working this for a few years now, and we will soon have these experiments out. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit for you today. And I'll start by a geographical context of Brazil and the Brazilian Atlantic forest. I'll talk about where the ideas of the BEF-Atlantic came from, our main goals, a little bit of our experimental design and challenge the calendar we intend to put these experiments out, and some things we need to make before finishing. So about my story, Rio 92, the convention brought me to the biology field. I was amazed by all the global changes, and that we needed to do something. I was a kid, but that called my attention for the later choice on the biology field. And then I did my graduate work in aquatic ecology. You can see here on the side, I was a young master's student working in the Amazon. And I was working in the water, but always looking to the land, because I was doing some decomposition work of terrestrial organic matter. And I was always curious about what happened in the terrestrial ecology, but I'm a little bit, but maybe a lot out of my comfort zone here, because, well, trees and other things. I mean, I was doing microbial work in the water, so it's a big challenge for me, but I'm really happy to do this. And since I got here in Juiz de Fora, where I am now, working now, I started some connections, I would say important connections with some colleagues, Dr. Fabio Roland, Dr. Fabrício, and I got together again with Gustavo and Leo, and we had the opportunity to discuss and start planning this whole experiment. So it's important, very important to say that the project is made by several hands, I call it teamwork. Wouldn't be possible without those key colleagues. And as we are here in this region where the water is very important, we also want to look from the land to the watershed. I'll show you, but we are working in an area that's very important for as a water source to a big city, to a medium to big city. And so that's very important to our project too. So Brazil is a big country, everybody knows that. And so it's a wide latitudinal range. And because of that, we have several different climatic conditions. And that brings us to called 7 biomes. And these biomes are represented in this image. So the blue one here is the ocean, which is considered one of the biomes. We have the Amazon forest here. We have the Atlantic forest here. It's also a big system. We have the Caatinga, Cerrado, which is called the Brazilian savanna, and Chaco and Pampa down here in south. So you can see it can hold very different systems. And so Brazil is also known by its huge biodiversity. And in this figure here from a very recent paper, we have data for tree and tree-like species richness in Brazilian biomes. And we can point out very high biodiversity, actually richness in the Amazon, more than 5,000 species like of trees, and more than 4,000 in the Atlantic forest, which is our biome that we are looking at right now. So we are very known also by very high biodiversity in our country. I also like this image because it shows very well how this biodiversity is spread around the country. So we have an important spot here in the Amazon region, and we also have other important spots at this area, which comprehends the Atlantic forest. So here you can see in details the very high biodiversity in the Amazon. It's a large area, but still has a lot to be known in there. So it probably is going to be darker around here someday if we manage to get to know all this biodiversity or get close to that. And here you can see in more details the biodiversity in Atlantic forest. Again, here is trees diversity. And so the reason that comes to my mind that this huge biodiversity in the Atlantic forest is given by the fact that it has a latitudinal gradient. It goes from the south to the northeast of Brazil. And so because of that, we have many different gradients: temperature, soil type, altitude, and different physiognomies. So that brings us to many possible different compositions, and so that would explain a lot about this huge biodiversity. And in this other figure from another recent paper, we can see here it's all Atlantic forest area, and the different colors stands for different types of vegetation and physiognomy. So we have around 4,253 species and up to 20,000 plant species in this biome. And it's divided in 5 different types of vegetation. The rainforest, the most known and common by everybody, but we also have seasonal forests, restingas, the way we call coastal sand dunes, that are spread all over the coast of Brazil from south to northeast, mangroves, and mountain grasslands. So that would bring us to understand why it's so diverse. So the whole Atlantic forest originally covered 1.3 million of square kilometers, which represents about 15% of the total area of Brazil. But it's also important to mention that 70% of the population and the internal product of Brazil stands in that area. So that's where we have more people and more production. 2/3 of our industrial production is also concentrated in this area. So the whole ecosystem is very threatened just because we have lots and lots of people and lots of activities going on in there. It's threatened, and it's already have been changed during the history of Brazil. And a very recent and accurate estimate says that 28% of the vegetation, the original vegetation, is still there, but most of it is affected by the edge effects. So it's already have been changing, and it's impacted already. And this paper also brings an important information that if we restore the Atlantic forest sites as our current law says, for example, areas that needs to be permanently preserved, like river borders and springs, we would bring back the Atlantic forest to 35% of coverage, of his original coverage, which is a very huge and important information and condition. So Atlantic forest is a high priority system to restoration. And this other very recent and very interesting paper shows how that comes. So the authors considered the diversity conservation, carbon and climate mitigation, and restoration costs. And so they run their models and shows that all these red areas around the globe are very important areas for conservancy to be restored, and they are high priority because of these 3 aspects that I just mentioned. And if we zoom in Brazil and we take a look at where we should expect the Atlantic forest to happen, which is in here, we do have a very big red color spread. So it says and confirms to us that the Atlantic forest should be a high priority to be restored and conserved. So now we are looking again to the map, but now I want to show where we are nowadays. So this is Brazil and Minas Gerais state, where we are, the place that our work is being established. The city is called Juiz de Fora. It's right here, close to Rio de Janeiro state. And so from our city, where the university is, 30 kilometers, we have a big reservoir, water reservoir that is very important to the city. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it soon. And we do have a field station there of the university. So this is the reservoir I just mentioned, and it's important because it's an important source of water to Juiz de Fora and region, which is giving almost half of the water that the city uses nowadays. It's 700,000 people, more or less, that use this water. I mean, half of that. So it's a very important site. And in red here, you can see what is our field station. It's a farm that belongs to the university now. In more details, we call it NIASA, and it's a nucleus that is dedicated to social and environmental sustainability in our region. And the first projects that are hosted here are the project with this private company, Via 040, and the BEF-Atlantic that we are working together with the team. So this is a very recent view of our field station from the front. Here you can see there is the main house of the field station, and you can see how is the topography, the margin with the reservoir and everything. And these pictures were taken from this farm, from this field station. And this first picture is a very representative example of the whole region. So you can see mix of forest fragments and pasture areas. And this is right inside the farm. Here you can see in details the pasture. And you can see also that we still have very nice nature conditions in these fragments. So this picture was taken right here. And so it's a mix of conditions, and it's very, very representative of the whole region. So talking about the region and how this represents it, I'm going to talk a little bit about the historical change of the vegetation. So this area, we have a piece of map here. We are, Juiz de Fora is right here. And since 1701, this whole region was protected by law, but not because of conservation issues, but because of the mining work. So this area was ruled for the gold and diamond mined around this region up here. And they didn't want any other activity to happen in there just because it could create alternative routes for these products that would not collect taxes. So it was quite preserved for a long time because of this economical issue. So after the gold mining declined, the economy in the region shifted from mining to coffee production cycle. So back then, I found this image in a dissertation of geography and history, and it shows more or less how the forest used to be. And after this coffee cycle that declined a while ago, they started the cattle breeding economy that is still on nowadays. And these two cycles of economy were responsible for most of the changes in the landscape. So the forest was greatly degraded, and this picture here changed a lot. And these areas, these preserved areas, are very restricted, usually to the top of mountains or really small areas. So based on this history and this condition, the main motivation for BEF-Atlantic were three. The first one was a partnership with the private company I mentioned, via 040, the name. So together we are doing the compensation, environmental compensation of a big area inside this farm of Niassa institution. And so, as we saw, we have a big reservoir, and that whole region needs a plan for restoration. And it's important to mention that they are still breeding cattle around. The tourism is growing very fast there, so the natural conditions shouldn't improve naturally. So we need to improve this process somehow, and why not looking at species diversity and forest restoration and ecosystem service. So that was our main motivations for the BEF-Atlantic experiment. And our main goal is to understand how the tree diversity may affect the ecosystem functioning and the restoration in this area of the Atlantic forest. So our experiment includes the approach of a wide regional species. So we are applying a wide species diversity in this tropical environment, mostly with species from this region here that changes a lot between different areas of the Atlantic forest. We include an orthogonal phylogenetic gradient with the diversity gradient. And we also have the possibility to look at responses in the interface between terrestrial and aquatic, and also to atmosphere ecosystems. So our experimental design, we are working with a species gradient from 0 to 24 species. We have these treatments, no species, we have monocultures, 3 species, 6, 12, and 24. And all these 24 are represented in monoculture, so we can work with the predicted and observed responses approach. Our experimental design also goes from low to high phylogenetic distance among different species compositions. And we also have a high diversity reference treatment where we combine 48 species, including the 24 ones from the monocultures and other 24 that we have around the same area. And we also have forest fragments around as references. So this is a design of the experiment. We have 232 experimental plots with this size, and they all have these buffer zone around. And inside these plots, we'll have 96 trees in each plot, and they are distant from each other for 2.3 meters. And our plots are divided in 4 equal plots, where we have randomly distributed the combination of species of each treatment. In this figure here, you can see better how it's going to be. So from 0 to 24, so 0, 1, 3, 6, 12, and 24 species. So it's all the same species. We called A. Here we have 3, so they are randomly distributed here and here. All subplots has the same amount of trees from different species, up to our highest diverse treatment with 24 species. And in this figure, we show all the species we are using. And in this 24 species, they are divided in several families and orders to cover a wide gradient of phylogenetic composition. And so during this experiment, it's a long-term experiment. We want to keep it running as much as possible, right? And so we're going to measure mainly productivity and carbon uptake, survival, recruitment of other species, invading plants, cycling, process, gas emissions and uptakes from soil, microorganisms, water content in soil. So is the diversity approach contributing to have more water in the soil, for example, and ultimately taking it to the reservoir. We want to look at the reservoir water conditions. I'm going to show you where our experiment is going to be set up, and you see that it's going to be concentrated in one part of the reservoir. And it's possible also to measure several processes in the soil, in the interface, and everything. So many other questions can be asked here. So this is an image of our station. And the blue area is where we're going to set up the BEF-Atlantic experiment. It has about 13 hectares of area where we intend to plant almost 22,000 trees. So it's in the margin of the reservoir, and it has several forest fragments as references. So we can compare and see how they are going. And also they can work as source of organisms, new species and everything, of course. And so in this image, I want to show you how this experiment setup is going to stand right close to the reservoir. And another important question here is how irregular the landscape around this area is. And so our experiment goes the same way. So you can see we have like a 90 meters range of altitude. So the lowest part is 750 meters, and the highest part is 8040. So we have a very big variation in this altitude, and the landscape is very irregular. And deal with this inclination condition is one of our major challenges. We expect collaborations in this topic too. So this is a nice view, I think, to understand how, so all those plots will be distributed around here. And we have this micro area, micro region to look at the water and how the forest will restore. So our schedule, we are doing this workshop now. Very close to now in January, we start some seed germination for the experiment. Some topography studies on how to deal with all this landscape topic. We plot design where these plots are going to be, and the experiment should start next October. And we are planning on measurements every 6 months for major variables. But I mean, changes are still possible, and different approaches also can be taken in here. So before I finish this talk, I want to show this picture. It's from one of our work groups, and I think mostly everybody that's working in this project is here. Of course, we have some edits. I added some pictures that were not in this day, but I want to acknowledge all those people here, that everybody is very, very important to this project. I also want to thank TUM and UFJF for this agreement and working together. I especially thank the TUM team, Dr. Coleman, Dr. Leonardo, and Dr. Gustavo, that have been working very hard with us. Here is our team, a lot of people involved and very committed to this project. And we are having support from Via 040. I would like to give a special thanks to Rafael and Gustavo that are leading our cooperation and also our graduate program in biodiversity of the university. And I thank you all for this audience. As I told this, I'm presenting what we are planning, and so any inputs, any questions are very welcome. And here on the side, you can find our project website with more information if you want to. Thank you so much. I'll be available as much as possible to discuss and answer questions if you want. Thank you again.